you think you're going to become a star, and do you care if you do?
You know what? It would be really cool.
Once upon a time, being the relatable girl next door was Taylor Swift's superpower. Now, it's her prison. The life of a showgirl isn't just the sound of a pop star growing older. It's the sound of pop's favorite fairy tale showing its fault lines. Because when you build your entire empire on innocence, on teenage diary entries, teardrops, and the fantasy of being just like you, what happens when you finally grow up? Today, we're doing a deep dive I have been dying to make. The ideology of Taylor Swift. The myth, the marketing, the machinery behind the most powerful woman in pop. But before we crack that all open, if Redwood had you feeling a little hot and bothered, I come bearing solutions. Guys, I need to share something so insane with you. I've literally never seen anything like this, and I am in shock. The first collection of silent toys are here. You heard that right, silent, like actually silent. The beautiful brains at Bellesa created what they call whisper tech, and it's somehow delivered us an assortment of toys in all shapes that hit all the right spots in silence. What? Yes, you heard that right. It's so insane. They're all so quiet. No noise, full power, and hits all the spots, if you know what I mean. So, of course, I've gotta hook you up. I'm doing a giveaway with Bellesa, so literally everyone wins a free toy. You get a toy, you get a toy, you get a toy. Meet the Whisper Collection, the world's first silent vibrators. Bellesa's new whisper tech makes sure that you never need to choose between power and discretion. Before I get into all the details, let me just show you the silence that is this collection. Look, I'll even hold it close to the mic so you can like pick up the nothing. Silence. Exactly, you can't hear anything. These toys are so luxurious and aesthetic, and they still pack a serious punch. They're powerful, but somehow completely quiet. And I really don't get how they did it, but I love it. You can put your pleasure first without waking up the entire house or even your partner sleeping right next to you, naughty, and now in whatever format you prefer. You know and love the Whisper Bullet, the silent bullet vibe with 5 speeds. It's tiny and literally inaudible, but the power is insane. Then there is the Whisper Rabbit and the Whisper Vibe and the Whisper Wand, which both have 6 vibration speeds. Whisper Vibe gives you the quietest G-spot stimulation you will ever find. The Whisper Rabbit has independently adjustable clit and G-spot stimulators, and the Whisper Wand delivers deep rumbly vibrations in case you want to step it up another notch, but still in silence. Did I also mention just like how soft they are? Honestly, this collection is insane, and you have to see it but not hear it, see what I did there, to really believe it for yourself. So that's why I am hooking you all up. Everyone who signs up wins a free Whisper Vibe or a free viral rose suction toy with any Whisper purchase. Click the link in my description and grab your new vibe. The big question is, they'll stay silent, but can you? So while I will be going into the life of a showgirl in this video, it really isn't about the album. It's more about the story underneath it and what it reveals, how Taylor Swift built her whole image on being the good girl, and what happens when that girl becomes a woman. Now, I can't get into that without touching on the reactions to this album, because woo, the internet had thoughts.
I genuinely think it's a joke. Like that, I'm being serious. I think it's a joke, and she's gonna be like, just kidding, y'all, here's the real one.
Is Taylor Swift using her music to red pill you? In short, yes. This is trad wife, red pill, MAGA softcore being served to us in a pop album.
But I'm not a black bitch, and I'm not a savage, but I'm scared that you might cheat on me with the black hood bitch, and she's gonna have a fat ass, and I have a flat ass.
She's literally an ethical billionaire. She bakes cookies. You're not gonna get it the first time. You're not gonna get it the second time. The third time, you're gonna be like, wow.
So not only was the album trash and the lyrics were trash, it gave I'm jealous because I'm not my future husband's type.
My princess in the morning, bad bitch afternoon.
I'm not a bad bitch. I'm not savage. Okay, so a woman doesn't want to be a bad bitch, so therefore she's a terrible songwriter, you hate women, you're anti-feminist. Got it. Okay, cool.
I don't wanna know about Travis Kelce's cock. I don't wanna know that it's cock.
This album was literally so bad that it almost feels like Taylor Swift is extorting her own fan base. From tone-deaf disses at Charlie XCX, and I mean that in both senses of the phrase, to lyrical comparisons between her fiance's anatomy and a redwood tree. You do the math. Accusations of musical interpolation.
I just realized Taylor totally copied this song.
And just a general lack of great writing. The consensus is that this album feels like a bit of a cash grab in just how poorly executed it is. She's your favorite English teacher who writes like she's read one too many Wattpad fanfics. And I say that as someone who used to be a Swiftie. Okay, maybe not a full Swiftie, but 14-year-old me went 10 toes down for Teardrops on my guitar and White Horse. But somewhere between Fearless and Folklore, I grew out of Taylor Swift's music for a lot of reasons that I'll get into in this video. And I think the problem, not just with this album, but with Taylor's recent work, is that she didn't. She's boxed herself into a kind of perpetual girlhood, and it's just not standing up the way it used to. It's like a 35-year-old woman writing the diary entries of a teenage girl. It's a life that she has long outgrown but can't quite stop performing. That's why I think people are so uncomfortable watching Taylor try and stay in that space. She's not a girl anymore, but she's still narrating the world like one. And I'm not here to hate Swifties, please don't drag me. I've already terrified making this video, more like disappointment from a former fan. It's just me wishing that we got a little more depth, a little more nuance. Because at this point, I don't really need another song about not being like other girls, or another metaphor for a guy who broke her heart, or any sort of information about Travis Kelce's redwood tree. This was actually the first Taylor Swift album that I've listened front to back since Reputation, and I expected a lot more. But The Fate of Ophelia sounded like Demi Lovato's Give Your Heart a Break mixed with Lord's pure heroin era. Elizabeth Taylor felt like leftover Lana Del Rey demos, and I can't have fun if I can't have you. Tell me that doesn't have Lana Del Rey written all over it. Wood is basically her doing a Sabrina Carpenter interpretation with the cheeky spoken lines, wink wink nudge nudge. And don't even get me started on that random Jackson 5 sounding song. Anyway, you get the point. This album doesn't sound like Taylor reflecting or growing. It sounds more like Taylor imitating, trying to cling to relevancy, like a collage of all the pop girls that she wants to be because she still doesn't know who she is. Remember the 2024 Grammys when Taylor won Album of the Year for Midnights and dragged Lana Del Rey up on stage with her? She looked like she literally wanted to be anywhere else for an album that was basically Lana cosplay, while Lana was literally standing right there nominated for the same award. She even buried Lana's vocals on Snow on the Beach, a song that Lana had a big role in playing. So anyway, I digress. I say all of that to say, I think part of why I see it this way is because recently I had a birthday / quarter life crisis. I turned 29. Yeah, Gen Z thinks I'm old now. And while I was busy mourning the death of my 20s, I realized something. The pop girlies that I grew up with, Taylor, Miley, Selena, Adele, Doja, Ariana, are all in their late 20s and 30s now. There's a maturity that comes with that, in love and ambition in the way that we see ourselves. And most of them have released projects that reflect that evolution. And while there's still space for unserious pop, like there always will be, I found myself craving music that feels like growth, that reflects the life path that I'm on.
I think millennials are looking for music that matches the emotional reality of adulthood.
Music that mirrors the version of womanhood that I've come to know. Taylor Swift just doesn't. It's not giving grown woman music, you know? As a fan turned critic, that's the thing about the life of a showgirl. It's not just bad in like a tragically funny way, it's bad in a very revealing way, because this album sounds like a woman who is trying to stay young, trying to stay relatable, and a little bit of a victim, the same traits that she built her empire on and that made her America's pop sweetheart. When you listen to Taylor Swift, like, you expect layered metaphors, vivid imagery, like a concept. So when we saw the title The Life of a Showgirl, the feathers, the stage, the drama, we thought finally maybe this would be Taylor's grown woman record, because we've aged with her. You know, the girls who cried to Teardrops on My Guitar now pay rent and have lower back pain, you know? If we want the old Taylor, we can go back to Speak Now, we can listen to Fearless again, but where is the new one? Where is the grown Taylor? There's that old saying, you stay the age you were when you became famous, and I really do think that's true for Taylor, and I think that's what we're seeing here, a kind of arrested development that's disguised as self-reinvention.
The album's problem is glaringly obvious. The problem is Taylor Swift is aging out of being a white girl.
Taylor built an empire on white girlhood, innocence, self-deprecation, the fantasy of being endlessly relatable and endlessly innocent. But at 35, that performance doesn't really work anymore. The image she's built around white girlhood isn't cute anymore. It's constricting. And I say white girlhood very specifically. As a black woman, I was never really afforded that kind of innocence. And Black Tay-Tay fans, I don't get you, because part of why I've never really been one is that her music just doesn't really feel like it's for me or girls like me. But beyond that is the mythology. The I'm just a girl shtick doesn't land the same when you're a powerful billionaire mogul. Because I think what this album really exposes is what happens when the princess of white girlhood becomes its queen, and the tiara doesn't quite fit anymore. She's outgrown the role, but she hasn't figured out how to really grow beyond it. And maybe that's the story here. Oh, and if you haven't already, or if you're new here, please like and subscribe to this video. We would love to have you as part of the Aphrodisia family. And you know, if something riles you up, if you agree with something, if you have a hot take to add to the conversation, don't forget to get down to it in the comment section. I always hang out there after the videos. I love talking to you guys, and I just love interacting with you guys and seeing what you have to say.
Saw this tweet and now my world is rocked, not because I necessarily care about either one of these women, they're both billionaires, both inherently unethical, but because this to me highlights just how much Taylor Swift's career was built on the back of her white womanhood. Not just her whiteness, not just her womanhood, but her white womanhood specifically. Thematically, tonally, talent-wise, those two albums could not be further apart. And it is clear to me that is the case because Taylor Swift has built her career for 20 years on the back of perpetual girlhood, which is only possible when you're white. Women of color do not get the luxury of being girls into their 30s. They're often actually viewed as adults before they've even hit adulthood. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift is 35 years old and still acting like a teenager, still singing songs like a teenager, still writing songs that would be fitting in a 15-year-old's diary. She can get away with that because she's white.
So let's start with the foundation of it all, the white femininity that's powered pop's biggest stars for decades and built Taylor Swift's entire image from day one. Her best-selling product, white girlhood, not just an aesthetic, but the architecture of her power.
When Taylor was a teenager, she wanted to be a pop star, so her parents decided to take the country route. Keep in mind, this is the 2000s. Pop music was highly sexual, it was sleazy. She makes being a white girl so fucking profitable. And the thing about Taylor Swift is that being a white girl is not just profitable for her, it's her entire brand. Because she's just like so awkward. And whenever she dances on stage, she's like bad because she's like awkward. And she loves like cats and baking and like hanging out with her fans. And she would likely continue with this forever, except for one small problem. Taylor Swift is 35 years old. And it's not like she's showing signs of aging or anything, but the brand of being a white girl is very much being a white girl. What happens in a few years whenever she's 40? What happens whenever she starts to get wrinkles? Once you're middle-aged, it's not cute anymore to be awkward. So she's aging out of being a white girl, but she doesn't have a brand or really even a sense of self outside of being a white girl. And keep in mind, the world has been moving on. An artist like Sabrina Carpenter could not exist 10 years ago. There was nowhere in the pop landscape for her. For like a cute little white girl who's that sexual. It didn't exist. And then on top of that, things have been rapidly changing politically. So people want different things from women now. And The Life of a Showgirl is a testament to Taylor's inability to rise to the occasion.
Pop has always run on the performance of white innocence. Madonna weaponized it, Britney sold it, Paris Hilton parodied it, Lana Del Rey romanticized it, and Taylor Swift, well, she industrialized it. She turned white girlhood into an empire built on perpetual victimhood, extended metaphors, and awkward relatability. When Taylor cries, it's poetry. When she's being petty, she's taking back her power. When Black women show those same emotions, we're called aggressive and bitter and ungrateful, or just ignored, like our pain is just seen as normal. That's the hierarchy her brand depends on, from Kanye at the VMAs to Scooter Braun to her feuds with Katy Perry, Olivia Rodrigo, Charli XCX, and Nicki Minaj. Unlike Miley, Ariana, Taylor never really had to go through a reinvention through Black aesthetics to reinvent herself. Being awkward, clumsy, and not like the other girls has always been enough. In fact, it's been incredibly profitable for her. The Eras tour boosted national economies. If we go back to Shake It Off, Taylor even staged that contrast, dancing awkwardly while Black women twerked behind her, their bodies used as props to highlight her purity. It's a pattern that she's repeated her whole career, defining herself against Blackness rather than alongside it. Taylor Swift doesn't need to borrow from Black culture to stay relevant. Whiteness itself is her safety net. That's why so many of her fans see themselves in her. While the Kardashians chased proximity to Blackness through BBLs, spray tans, and Black boyfriends, Taylor stayed the pure alternative, the fantasy of the good white girl who never has to change. And while yes, Taylor does reinvent herself through the eras, it's always within the confines of whiteness, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. She just knows her audience, and that's who she is, right? From the corkscrew curls to the sparkly dresses of her country days to the black eyeliner of Reputation to the cottagecore poet in Folklore, each reinvention stays safely within the same spectrum. She changes the costume, but never the character. Right now with Travis Kelce, she's leaning into the all-American football wife aesthetic, wholesome, patriotic, and traditional. She's literally trad wife coded. And when you build an empire on white innocent femininity, on white girlhood, on being boring Barbie, what happens when the world moves on? The act doesn't land the same in an era where womanhood is more complex, self-aware, and political. Instead of evolving, she doubles down. The Life of a Showgirl is proof of that. She's leaning into the safest version of femininity. Soft, patriotic, apolitical, the kind that flatters liberals who call her feminist and conservatives who call her wholesome. But in 2025, you can't really sit on the fence anymore, and her image is starting to whistle to the right, whether she means to or not, because whiteness still sells. It always has. The culture keeps buying the same ideal, as we saw with Sydney Sweeney, denim eugenic ads, Pretty Little Things, rebrand, and influencers preaching about submission being empowerment. The pendulum is swinging conservative, and Taylor Swift is moving with it. She's always been the queen of safe politics, but as the world drifts right, her neutrality stops looking so neutral. She's just staying exactly where whiteness feels the safest, because that's good for her brand, right? That's always been her business model. For most of her career, Taylor Swift has avoided politics entirely. During the 2016 US elections, one of the most polarizing in modern history, she said nothing. And that silence was her strategy. She basically built her fan base on being relatable to everyone. A fan base split between conservative country fans and liberal pop girls. Staying apolitical kept her profitable, but neutrality is political too. As we all know, silence sides with power.
2 days ago, the White House posted this. Was that a Taylor Swift song? From the new microaggression-filled white supremacy album being used in a video by the White House? Who could have possibly predicted this? So this video was posted 2 days ago. A full 48 hours. In Taylor Swift land, that is like a year, right? Because she could take her private jet around the world in that amount of time. No word from Taylor's camp. Now, the thing is, the White House and this, president use the music of artists all the time without their permission, right? And every single time something like that has happened, the artist comes out and says, I absolutely condemn the use of my music by this horrific administration. I want nothing to do with it. Now, Taylor Swift hasn't come out and said anything yet. Who knows? Maybe Tree Payne is on vacation. But here's the thing. Taylor Swift is one of the most infamously litigious music artists, probably of all time. She trademarks popular phrases. She sued Olivia Rodrigo for simply being inspired by her. She testified before Congress and got all of her fans rallied behind the Ticketmaster situation. There's an entire chapter of her personal lore dedicated to her getting her master's back. And you expect me to believe that that man and that administration used her song without permission in a video, and it's been more than 48 hours and nobody from her team has responded? That literally can only mean one thing. They paid her for the use of the song. She's one of them.
And as Trump rose up, parts of his base projected their own values onto Taylor. The literal KKK called her an Aryan goddess. She never addressed it overtly, which only made her more useful to them. And then in 2018, she finally broke her silence, endorsing 2 Democratic candidates and calling out Republican Marsha Blackburn's anti-LGBT record. And it was branded as her woke era. Proved that Taylor Swift had evolved, but it was too late. She had stayed quiet through Charlottesville, through the Muslim ban, through years of open racism, and when she finally spoke, it felt safe, reactionary, rather than actually being radical and meaning something. By 2020, she was tweeting polished anti-Trump statements perfectly timed with mainstream liberal feminism's rebrand. The good white woman standing up to Trumpism, which brings us to the life of a showgirl, where her image now functions as a kind of anti-Trump feminism, especially in the Travis Kelce era, mirrors the very femininity that Trumpism idolizes. White, straight, blonde, beautiful, obediently adored. She's become a fantasy for both sides, and she's cashing in on being in the middle ground. So when people call Taylor MAGA coded, her image mirrors the aesthetics of white conservatism, and that seems to be what she's doubling down on. It feels crazy to say about someone once crowned the face of millennial feminism, but Taylor Swift has quietly become pop's most glamorous conservative. Since dating Travis Kelce, her world has tilted slightly to the right. The Mahomes family, Dave Portnoy, Harrison Butker, all part of that MAGA to anti-woke pipeline. Her new loyalty feels more like alignment with this emerging status quo. She stopped resisting the gravity of acknowledging her whiteness as power. That's exactly what we hear on the song Cancelled. Taylor casts herself and her friends as victims of cancel culture, cloaked in Gucci and in scandal. She's the rich woman defending her right to stay unaccountable. And when you're defending friends accused of racism or assault who agree with cozying up to people who openly endorse and uplift xenophobia, singing "Why Can't We Have Fun" kind of hits a bit differently, you know? It's the apolitical white woman's anthem, tired of empathy and bored of accountability. Because really, this is her evolution from white girlhood to white womanhood. The good girl grew up, and honey, she's conservative. Which brings us to Wishlist. Got me dreaming about a driveway with a basketball hoop, boss up, settle down, and make the whole block look like you. That last line, make the whole block look like you, I actually stopped the song and replayed it. It's giving Sydney Sweeney, it's giving eugenics, it's giving let's make the whole block white. Oops. Together, Travis Kelce and Taylor have become the embodiment of the American dream. The blonde pop star and the all-American athlete kissing after the Super Bowl while the fireworks go off. The next step, suburban utopia as racial utopia, the fantasy of safety and sameness and sentimental patriotism. The house, the hoop in the driveway, the babies who look just like their white father, a racial boundary dressed as romantic ambition, Taylor's final evolution into the final boss mode of conservative womanhood. And when your ex's fiance is a black woman, I feel like that line is even more pointed, because like, make the whole block look like you, it's giving, you know, something that Travis Kelce's ex could never give him, because obviously she's a black woman. Woo! Okay, so that was a lot. We went down a very slippery slope there. So let's slow it down for a second and talk about Taylor Swift and the performance of sensuality in Wood. This is quite interesting to me. How does sensuality, something that is raw, embodied in adults, even exist inside a brand that's built on white girlhood? The short answer is it doesn't.
The biggest problems for Taylor Swift trying to engage with her sensual or sexual identity via this album is that sensuality as an adult is embodied. When you think of the hot girls, right? When you think about Charlie XCX, Gabriette, Meg the Stallion, right? They are in their bodies in this really particular way, right? Even Charlie XCX to a point wearing just a pair of shorts and a tank top, but still being able to look and embody hotness because she is very much, I don't know how else to say it, but in her body. What Taylor did was attempt to access sexuality through a lot of costuming. And so you don't really get a sense of her being a sensual, sexual being. You get the sense of almost a teenager playing dress up in the hot outfits of other archetypes, whether it's Marilyn Monroe or the different roles that she played throughout one of her videos.
And this is exactly why I think Taylor struggles with sensuality, because real sensuality can't exist inside the architecture of white girlhood, because it's built on purity culture. It's about being chosen, not choosing. It's about being adored, not desiring. So when Taylor tries to embrace sensuality on this album with Wood, it ends up feeling like a parody, like a joke, like she's playing sexy instead of actually feeling sexy. Her sexuality is always symbolic. The popular guy finally picking the nice girl, not the woman who wants, who touches, and who hungers. Romantic victory and conquest, you know, just metaphors about moonlight.
When I first started seeing like the promo photo shoots for Life of a Showgirl, I was intrigued because I was like, okay, this is fun. This like vintage 20s Parisian showgirl aesthetic. It was very sexy. There's a lot more skin than we've ever really seen from Taylor before. It seemed more mature. Maybe that would be reflected in the songs. And then I hear Wood, and I'm like, oh, you haven't matured. You're just biting Sabrina Carpenter and trying to show her that you can do her thing better.
Her sensuality still orbits men like planets orbit around the sun. It's always defined through their gaze, which leads me to the bigger issue at hand here. Taylor Swift at her core is male-centered. You can fight me for that, she is. Even the Charlie diss track, Actually Romantic, No Man Has Ever Loved Me Like You, still circles back to male validation. Taylor's feminism has always had this tone. Half, you go girl, and half, you'll meet a nice man who really gets you one day. His love was the key that opened my thighs, that just like actually made me gasp. Like, I'm sorry, what? I'm very, what are my ears hearing?
You have to make sure everyone knows that it was his love that was the key to opening your thighs, and not just you being a slut.
Like, she's not claiming pleasure in her own right. She's being given permission to allow herself pleasure by a man's love. Like, it's okay for her to have sex now as a 35-year-old woman because she's in love and a man, like, is in love with her. Like, that feels like purity culture. Even when she's trying to sound sexually liberated, the subtext is always, a man made me feel this way. Even when she tries to be grown, she's narrating her growth through the gaze of a man who finally made her feel safe enough to have it. And this isn't a new thing for Taylor. Taylor's empowerment has always been about men, exes, lovers, critics. Her entire emotional ecosystem depends on their gravity. Even when she's owning her story,
there are going to be people along the way who will try to undercut your success or take credit for your accomplishments or your fame.
It's about who gave her the pain, who gave her permission. But maybe the best example of this actually is Actually Romantic. Like, it's actually sweet. All the time you've spent on me, it's actually romantic. I've really gotta hand it to you. no man has ever loved me like you do. She's literally comparing another woman's criticism to a man's love. Like, that is weird. Like, it's weird. No man has ever loved me like you do. Like, her rivalry with her is like a form of courtship. Like, it's bizarrely Freudian. Even her conflicts with women have to pass through a male-coded lens of flirtation. It's not just like another woman challenged me, it's another woman desired me. Like, it's pure Regina George. Like, you hate me because you secretly like want me. And that's the perfect encapsulation of how Taylor's feminism operates. Everything still orbits around desirability. And that's Taylor's kind of tension in a nutshell. She's the woman who made a fortune performing girlhood, and she doesn't know how to inhabit womanhood. Sensuality requires vulnerability, and this is something that Taylor's brand is at odds with. Like, it depends on control. She's always behind this bulletproof glass, and she doesn't really let people touch her. And that's why the life of a showgirl feels like so hollow. Like, the feathers and the sequins and the drama demand this embodied sense of womanhood that I don't think that Taylor Swift can quite access. When she wants to explore sensuality, she borrows it. You know, Lana Del Rey gives her tragic glamour. Sabrina Carpenter gives her playful sex appeal, and because Taylor Swift doesn't yet really know what her sensuality looks like. And I think that's the interesting part for me. Like, the white girl she built her empire on won't let the woman inside of her come out. Like, she's shackled herself. So now let's talk about the Misogynoir in Eldest Daughter and the whole Kayla Nicole situation. When a woman's power is built on being desired, especially by men, it almost always comes at the expense of other women. And Taylor has a long history of doing exactly that, defining her purity and her innocence and her specialness in contrast to black women. Like, black women always catching strays, honestly. We saw it as far back as in 2015 during her Twitter spat with Nicki Minaj. Nicki was calling out the lack of black women nominated for Video of the Year, pointing out how slim white pop stars were always rewarded for the same aesthetics that black women were punished for, cultural appropriation, yada yada yada. Taylor Swift completely missed the point and tweeted, "It's unlike you to pit women against each other." It was peak white feminist fragility, centering herself in a conversation that was never about her, then positioning herself as the victim when she wasn't even part of the conversation. She later apologized when Nicki basically was like, "I wasn't even talking about you." That's exactly the same energy that's like echoing through Eldest Daughter, aside from the weird Gen Z internet slang stuffing.
Damn, Daniel, I'm in me mom's car.
There was some weird stuff in that song. "I have been afflicted by a terminal uniqueness. I can't stop pitting myself against black women at every opportunity." Because what really threw me wasn't the weird slang, it was which slang that she chose. Because when Taylor Swift sings about not being a savage or not being a bad bitch, it's very definitely racially coded. A lot of people said that we were reaching with this one and it's not that deep, but Taylor Swift chooses language very carefully. Like, she's, you know, she calls herself an English teacher, and I refuse to believe that bad bitch and savage just slipped in there as random slang. Like, these are very specific words. They carry history, they carry race. She's not just drawing a line between herself and a certain kind of woman, she's drawing it through the bodies of black women specifically, because bad bitch and savage are in fact cultural reclamations. Like, they came from women like Nicki Minaj, Rihanna, Megan Thee Stallion, the City Girls, women who took the language that punished them for their sexuality and their blackness and reclaimed their power with it. They're literally black coded words. So when Taylor Swift, the most protected white woman in pop, says that I'm not that, she's reminding us that she is the opposite of that. She is soft, she is safe, she's delicate. She's not the black ghetto hood rat. She's the one that you can take back home to your mom.
Veronica is the type of girl that I could take home to my mother, take home to my family, settle down with it, and then start a family with. And Maya's the girl that's gonna keep life exciting. She's gonna be the one to keep me on my toes and tell me how it is.
Let's play a game. I want you to guess, who do you think is Veronica? The woman that Travis Kelce claims is the type that he could take home to his mother and the type that he can settle down with, who he would have a family with. And which one of these ladies is Maya? The woman that he says is only for fun, for thrills, and to keep life exciting. But no, not to bring home to his mother.
When you pair that with the current context of her relationship with Travis Kelce and the endless comparisons to his black ex, Kayla Nicole, I feel like it becomes a bit more impossible to ignore. Travis Kelce has said in the past or implied that he's attracted to black women, but they're not who he would settle down with. And on top of that, Kayla has been dragged through racist abuse online for simply just existing and being Travis Kelce's ex.
After endless trolling, she even posted a powerful message on X. You will never make me hate me. Hang it up, Boo-Key. Because think about it, this is someone who's been publicly humiliated, harassed, and dissected for years.
So with that context, Taylor's lyrics sound more like, I'm not that savage ghetto hood rat, I'm the good woman. I'm the one worth loving, the one the world approves. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what misogynoir looks like. When white femininity defines itself not by what it is, but who it isn't. The good girl narrative reproduces itself through contrast. White softness is only validated because black confidence exists as the opposite. And what's so frustrating about this is how invisible it feels to her. Like, Taylor Swift writes like someone who's never had to think about what her desirability might cost other women. You know, like words like savage and bad bitch were born out of survival. And when she rejects those things and positions herself in opposition to them, she's reinscribing the hierarchy that made them necessary in the first place. So yeah, like, it really is that deep. It continues a story where white womanhood is innocence and good, and black womanhood is just everything that it must renounce. And Travis Kelce becomes a symbol here, though the white man whose desirability is measured through proximity to whiteness. His black ex is recast as a subtextual competition. And that's why I think this whole beef between these two women has been so talked about, because it really flares up this dynamic. And that's not the only time she makes a subtle link between blackness and badness on the album. Take Opalite. It's classic Taylor Swift, you know, storm into sunrise, darkness into glow, these very visual, spiraling, sprawling metaphors. Like, you know the formula by now. You were dancing through the lightning strikes, sleepless in the onyx night, but now the sky is opalite. Taylor Swift knows the power of a metaphor. Like, it's literally her whole brand. Opalite is the stone that is milky white. Onyx is black. In a year where she's being constantly compared to her boyfriend's black ex, it's hard not to side-eye that imagery. Whiteness as this beautiful, bright light of goodness, and blackness as evil. She could have chosen any stones, but no, she picked those stones. And then, as if to double down, she drops the lightning bolt necklace. And you know, there's been some controversy around this. Fans called it an Easter egg, the internet called it something else. But because a lot of people pointed out the far right iconography, you know, the Yahtzee SS bolts, I don't know if I really buy into that being an overt reference, but I can see why people are making those comparisons, because when you put all the pieces together, the racial coding in Eldest Daughter, the Onyx to Opalite lyric, the lightning bolt merch resembles stuff. It feels like a pattern. Like, even if there is no intent, the effect still stands, because once you cast yourself as the light, everyone becomes the shadow, and that is very synonymous with that kind of ideology. And then, because of course it does, it just keeps going. Because then came Kayla Nicole, her Halloween special that had the internet in a frenzy. Because all of that being said, the beef still kind of felt like it could be fan fiction, you know, that the internet was inventing another woman versus woman subplot. And right on cue, she posts a photo of herself dining with a group of black people who look randomly assembled. The classic "see, I have black friends" press shot to kind of deflect the rumors that she's a racist. And it also reveals something else, like Taylor Swift throwing down the full weight of her power on anyone who threatens her. Like, Kayla Nicole is an influencer with a few 100,000 followers. Taylor Swift is a billionaire with the cultural power of a small nation. When someone that powerful claps back, even subtly, it feels structural. Like, it feels like the big guy punching down on the little guy. Because in every feud that Taylor's been in, Kayla, Olivia Rodrigo, Charlie XCX, Taylor is always the most powerful person in the room. And when she throws a jab, it rarely feels like a fair fight. And I'll come back to the brand of not being a white girl anymore, but a white woman, and how that is built on fragility. It's the promise of being small enough to be protected and never large enough to be feared. And even now, even as a billionaire, she's still performing victim. She's still performing this fragility, even though she's anything but. But Father Figure takes it one step further. Father Figure is Taylor Swift fully stepping into the role that she spent her whole career pretending to need protection from. The industry father, the gatekeeper, the one who decides who gets let in and who gets shut out. Heard through that lens, especially after everything with Olivia, Charlie, and Katy Perry and Kayla, you realize her relationships with other women in pop have always been about power. If Eldest Daughter was about innocence, Father Figure is about control. The moment Taylor stops being the ingenue and starts playing the patriarch, which is weird. Like, it's weird that she would frame herself as a patriarch. When I found you, you were young, wayward, lost in the cold, pulled up to you in the Jag, turned your rags into gold. She's positioning herself as the gatekeeper now. She is the one who finds, shapes, and saves the next starlet. Like, it's giving mentor as mob boss. This love is pure profit. Just step into my office. And I think that lyric takes on a deeper meaning when you remember the Olivia Rodrigo saga. So to refresh your memory, or for those of you who don't know, when Driver's License blew up, Taylor's public congratulations, looked like a sweet passing of the torch. And then Sour dropped, and suddenly Taylor's team were co-writers on Deja Vu and One Step Forward, Three Steps Back for melodic similarities. Like, no lawsuit, no feud, but just a quiet paperwork and a 50% cut. And Olivia Rodrigo was a huge Taylor Swift fan, and they get close, and then suddenly Taylor's taking a 50% cut of a song that sounds vaguely similar. And that's textbook father figure energy. Mentorship until the protege becomes competition. You can be inspired by her, but only if she gets paid for it. This is the moment Taylor's transformation from victim to institution becomes clear. She's not fighting the machine anymore. She is the machine. She is the father figure. And that dynamic echoes across her feuds with Olivia, with Charlie. I wouldn't call Lana a feud, but it's the way she exercises her power. Every time she's threatened, she switches from collaborator to competitor, from mother of pop to mob boss. The victim became the protector became the punisher. And that's Taylor Swift in 2025. The woman who built her brand on girlhood and victimhood, now ruling as the power she once fought against. She's the father figure now. And of course, I need to dig into the whole Charli XCX diss track saga in a bit more detail here. It wasn't really about Taylor. Like, Sympathy Is a Knife was more about Charlie's internal struggle. It was a painfully honest confession about how the industry pits women against each other. A half Asian, working class, relentlessly innovative woman who's shaped the sound of modern pop for a decade and still been famous but not quite. Not really getting her flowers and her due credit. It's a painfully self-aware song about what it feels like to live and work in the shadow of someone like Taylor Swift. So when Charlie sings, "'Cause I couldn't even be here if I tried. I'm opposite, I'm on the other side." I love that song. She is naming that tug of war that so many women know too well, between wanting to be free from comparison with other women and still being haunted by it. It's not quite jealousy, but it's the exhaustion of living in a world that teaches you how to measure yourself through someone else's reflection, and then the shame you feel for feeling that, the ache of constantly being compared to the perfect girl, the white perfect girl, as a South Asian woman. And that's something that I can relate to. And what's beautiful about Charlie's writing is that she doesn't moralize it. She doesn't try and make herself look better. She just admits it. She admits her flaws. She finds a kind of peace in saying, well, okay, I can't be her, and I'm fine with being me and that's okay. And Taylor Swift, she took this personally, actually romantic with the Regina George vibes, you know, is giving why are you so obsessed with me? And it completely misses the entire emotional subtext of the song. And what makes this response even more glaringly obvious is Lorde, who did the exact opposite with Girl So Confusing, which turns that same tension inward, turns it into curiosity instead of competition and growth. And I think that's what growth and depth sounds like.
How did you feel when you first heard Girl So Confusing? I felt this unmistakable mix of feeling the love of someone putting you into a piece of art and this sort of sick feeling of hurting someone and of being misunderstood.
And Taylor Swift could have done that too. She could have turned that critique inward and accessed the same level of depth, but she didn't. And that's the point. The woman who once wrote the diary of a generation of girls still can't read the room, still can't access that level of depth. The feminist branding of capitalism. So at this point, we've watched Taylor Swift evolve from the girl who fought the system to the woman who is cashing its checks. But that transformation isn't just in her music, it is in her bank account, her whole economics. Because Taylor Swift isn't just the music industry's father figure, she is its first lady of capitalism. Welcome to the final act of this whole performance, the feminism of a billionaire. Taylor Swift sells feminism the same way Starbucks sells coffee. Convenient, comforting, and always at a markup. She doesn't burn the system down, she just wants to own her masters within it. That's the feminism of the marketplace, structural inequality disguised as individual empowerment. Bell Hooks called it lifestyle feminism, the version that lets women participate in patriarchy as long as they profit from it. Every time Taylor Swift reclaims, rebrands, or re-records, she models success as reclamation through commerce. Her triumphs are financialized feelings, heartbreak monetized, victimhood leveraged, solidarity turned into a skew. She's turned feminism into a franchise, one that offers this cathartic release without really critiquing it. And recently, Billie Eilish made a pretty uncontroversial comment about billionaires hoarding their wealth. And I think it should have been a non-story, but it became this big kind of controversial conversation, igniting a small war, not with Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, but with Taylor Swift's fans. It turned into this collision between two feminisms, one that questions power and one that embodies it. Billie's fans pointed out the obvious. Taylor Swift is a billionaire, and we rarely see her wealth redistributed beyond her own mythos. Swifties, countered the criticism to, Taylor Swift donates privately. She used to make a big show of, donating a bunch of her money after every concert, but a few $1 million here and there doesn't really make a dent in a billionaire's wealth. If Taylor donated even 20% of her net worth, around $320 million, she would still be a billionaire. That's pocket change for her. It's the equivalent of me giving $5 in a tin of beans to the food bank. But it's okay because Taylor Swift's not just rich, she's relatable about it. Every lyric, every vinyl, every tour stop folds into the myth of this self-made woman. She wrote her way to freedom. She outsmarted the men who tried to control her and her wealth. But as we all know, there is no such thing as an ethical billionaire. Not when your empire depends on the unpaid labor of millions who feel like they're part of your rise and will literally buy into that feeling. And I've been wanting to talk about this for forever, but I really want to talk about the scam that is Taylor's version. Taylor's version was sold to us as this feminist fairy tale, the brave artist taking back what's hers from the evil men in suits, from Scooter Braun. And don't get me wrong, like it sounded good, we all loved the righteous sentiment of it, but she basically recruited her peasant fans to repurchase her album so she could make even more money from it as a billionaire. Ownership in Taylor's world is not rebellion, it's just really good marketing and another way to cash in a check. She turned the feminist agenda into a money-making scheme, essentially. Buy this, again, not for me, but for women everywhere. Come on now. Like, it's a cash grab, like branded as feminism. I will hand it to her. It is kind of genius. It's like evil genius. She managed to make billion-dollar capitalism feel like a feminist uprising. A redemption arc that you can stream, collect, and pre-order in 6 different pastel variants. It's interesting how a fan base confuses consumption with some sort of kind of feminist solidarity. Because Because I think at the crux of it, Taylor doesn't, just sell records. She sells recognition. She sells emotion. Her fans aren't just streaming music. They're performing their devotion to her in public through their consumerism. They defend her online. They decode cryptic clues. They buy the same album 6 times in 6 different versions. And, to them, that is them serving their queen. And I think this is emotional capitalism. Like, it's not about convincing you to love the product. It's about convincing you that your love is the product, or maybe it is that the love is the product. And I feel like that's why being a Swiftie feels, participatory, almost moral, like you're part of something bigger. You're not a consumer, you're a co-conspirator, you're part of this community, a soldier in Taylor Swift's war for artistic freedom, except you're paying for your own uniform. You're paying for your concert tickets. Taylor Swift has turned the labor of feeling, hers and ours, into a renewable resource. Every heartbreak is a march. And when the showgirl takes her final bow, she'll leave behind not a revolution, but an empire built on complete and utter devotion. Okay, so I've got some final words for you. I feel like people haven't fallen in love with Taylor Swift's songwriting. They've fallen in love with her mediocrity. And I don't mean that as an insult. This is just something I've always thought. Her power is in that she's ordinary in a way that feels relatable and sacred to her fans. She represents that fantasy of being unexceptional and still adored, something that her hordes of, beige fans can relate to, because that's what white girlhood has always been promised, like your innocence is power and your safety is virtue, and it's not just her aesthetic, it's the whole architecture of her success. We're finding out now that girlhood has an expiry date, and when the world stops protecting little girls, it starts rewarding the women who uphold the rules. So Taylor Swift did what white femininity has always done to survive, and that's what protects her brand. And when her fans are defending her now, they're not defending her music, they're defending what she represents, that you can be powerful without being political, rich without being responsible, and loved without ever having to be held accountable, for your actions. Maybe that's what the life of a showgirl really is. The sound of a woman still performing the girl that she used to be, and a world still applauding her for never changing.